In a daze, without even realizing what I was doing, I stepped down from the small ladder I had pulled out of the closet and trudged back to the bed. When I realized this, I sat heavily, staring at what I could see through the open, dangling smoke detector cover. All the implications of why and how the object of my gaze ended up where it did and what exactly that meant flooded my mind. I'm not entirely sure when the suspicion took hold in my head that Veronica, my wife of 3 years, was cheating on me, but it took hold. Based on my research, she exhibited many of the classic signs of adultery. The sudden change from never going on overnight trips for work to going away for the entire weekend, like right now, only reinforced what had been making me nervous for a while. I mean, who leaves for work on a Friday afternoon? At least the last short 2-day trip she took was less socially disruptive in the middle of the week. In retrospect, suspicions began rearing their ugly heads about a month ago. I returned from my trip to find that Ronnie had suddenly changed. Colder, more emotionally distant than before, less affectionate in general. We always had sex after I returned from a trip, but this time she apologized and refused. After that, I tried a couple more nights, but was refused. The thoughtful guy that I was stopped grumbling, hoping that she would come out of the horror she was in. I realized that here we were, a month later, and we hadn't made love since the night before our first trip. Looking at the smoke detector above the bed in the bedroom of our apartment, I now knew why. A sudden change in one behavior prompted me to look for other differences. When I opened my eyes, there was no shortage of clues. I noticed that she looks at me when she thinks I'm busy with something else, and then turns away when I look at her. I thought her "I love you" sounded a little forced these days. Besides, a lot has changed in her life recently. From the sudden increase in bachelorette parties, suddenly changing the password on the computer, taking phone calls and then walking out of earshot during the conversation, to conversations with her best friend Julie in the kitchen that suddenly stopped when I walked into the house. They were all there, all adding to my growing paranoia. Unwilling to accept what I now strongly suspected, I began cataloging when I thought she had the opportunity. I followed her to the next bachelorette party and was pleasantly surprised that she was exactly where she was supposed to be and behaved exactly as a wife should behave. In a fit of petty anger, I also changed my login password. If she's going to keep secrets, I'll be damned if I give her free access to my things. Her actions and attitude affected me. Sometimes I couldn't guarantee that I would be calm enough to pretend to be normal at home, so I would stay later in the office or go out for drinks with friends. I hated what she brought me. For example, I started calling her at work at lunchtime. I hated it even more seeing the pattern form over the weeks. If before she always took only half for lunch, now she takes an hour or more, almost every day. Enough time to have lunch with your lover. Just enough time for a quickie. Unfortunately, part of my job was to monitor the reception and phones during lunch hours, so I was never able to follow Ronnie's work to keep an eye on it. I probably could have taken the day off, but subconsciously I was afraid of what I would find. I was disappointed that our finances didn't extend to hiring a private investigator to accompany her on her first overnight work trip 2 weeks ago. I called her at any time, and she always answered quickly and was never out of breath, but I knew that she was a smart woman. How clever was the object hidden by the smoke detector cover above the bed? One look at this item, and I immediately realized that she was not only deceiving me, but also doing everything possible to prevent me from finding out. That day, all my suspicions came together, wanting to see my wife before she left for the weekend with her lover, perhaps in the vain hope of reminding her that I love her. I returned home a little early, timing it so that she would be home from the office, but not yet left for the airport. She clearly wasn't expecting me and left the bedroom looking damn guilty. I sat on the bed until she had no choice but to go to the bathroom to finish her makeup. I then carefully checked the closet and under the bed. Nothing. Then she checked that her phone was still protected by an unknown password and carefully removed enough clothes from her suitcase to make sure there were no suspicious underwear or cocktail dresses in there. This puzzled me. When I entered the house, she was definitely up to no good in that room. After that, I checked the trunk of her car for other bags. Nothing, but she is a very smart woman. Instead of allaying my fears and easing my suspicions that my loving wife was doing something dirty to me, the lack of evidence only made them stronger. It pissed me off that she outsmarted me. I came up with a plan to catch her that was within my budget. Next week, I'll plan my own work trip. Maybe Veronica will take this opportunity and invite her lover while I'm away. I would install a tiny camera in the smoke detector above the bed to record the action. It was just a one-room apartment, so one camera was enough for me. Once my suspicions were confirmed, I knew exactly what to do to end this joke marriage without being financially abused. So 3 hours after Veronica left for her second overnight business trip, I moved the bed to the side, pulled our small 3-step home staircase under the centrally located smoke alarm, and released the small clip on the side of the device, causing the lid to open and hang on a noose. Inside was a camera exactly like the one I was holding in my left hand. A camera that transmits a signal to a small transponder that can be hidden anywhere. A transponder which in turn transmitted a signal either to a laptop for direct viewing or to a computer for later viewing. I knew with certainty that my wife would prefer a combination of both. So, not only was she having an affair, but she was monitoring my whereabouts and behavior while she was doing it to see if there were any signs that I was suspicious of her. I got up and walked into the living room. There was another smoke detector and, of course, another camera. Just to confirm my suspicions beyond a shadow of a doubt, I went over my car with a fine-tooth comb. It took me a quarter of an hour to find the tiny GPS tracker. I put my hands on the hood, my chin on my chest, and I felt sick with the thought that at that very moment, my wife was in another city, where she was having sex with a stranger. Or is it not? Suddenly, I remembered how abruptly Veronica refused my offers to drop her off at the airport. I raised my head, staring blankly at the garage door as my thoughts raced. Didn't she really fly away? Maybe she is, now somewhere in the city with her lover? No. The woman I knew was too smart not to get a guy to wear a rubber band. Too many chances to pass on an STD to me. I shook my head, realizing I was getting distracted, putting off the inevitable conversation with myself. Could I forgive my wife for not sleeping with me? Never. Well, the conversation is over. The thought of waiting until she returned on Sunday evening to face her was not an option. I needed to find her and end this immediately. Veronica handled all family finances. I pulled out all the latest bank statements from the closet and looked at them for the last month. Nothing unusual until I got to the line. Transferred to account number XYZ. The amount is $500. After logging into NetBank, I connected the specified account number. I looked into the notebook where my wife kept encrypted passwords, found an unfamiliar one, then guessed the code on the third try. It was a credit card I didn't know existed. The last trade was not even 3 hours old, at a cheap chain motel 10 minutes away. For some reason, the realization that she was footing the bill for her date with her lover made me angry. Knowing that she was basically stealing our money to do this made me freak out. Next came a recording from the same motel, which coincided with her first intended trip out of town. Even higher is a recording made when she bought surveillance equipment. Ironically, she bought it from the same store as me. A quick glance at the statement showed that she made the purchase 3 days after I returned from my last trip, so she most likely met this asshole while I was away. It made sense. I knew that if I went there in my current mood, I might kill someone, so I sat down and took a few deep breaths. Time to think. Did Veronica know that I found her cameras? Did she have a laptop that was constantly receiving footage of her lying on her back being plowed by whoever that was? Hardly. I couldn't imagine her being so heartless. After all, I knew that one of the reasons she had gone to such extraordinary lengths to keep me from finding out about her affair was to spare me pain. It must have been so. Otherwise, she was far from being the loving person I thought she was. It was more likely that she was recording the camera footage. Returning to my car, I recorded the GPS tracker data and Googled it. Of course, it had a software feature that could alert the cell phone when the device was in motion. So there is no need to disturb the conscience of her lover and her conscience by constantly having a channel from our house on the screen. All she had to do was listen to the alarm. Mean bitch. Then my thoughts went back to what I did or didn't do to keep her faithful to me. All the usual reasons that I suppose all people in my position thought flashed through my mind. Was it really bad for her in bed with me? Was I unsatisfactory in bed? I thought so. Until she interrupted me, I thought she was thoroughly enjoying my efforts. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I really was shit in bed and she was faking it all this time. God, do I doubt my masculinity? All these thoughts made me angrier instead of calming me down. So I turned my mind to my options. What is she doing now? What if I'm wrong? What would she have done if she had already seen me find her camera? Kick her boyfriend out of their love nest? Accelerate their plans to dump me, fleece me, and force her to ride off into the sunset with him? Or was she just sitting there, with or without him, thinking of a compelling reason why she should keep me under surveillance? Assuming she's watching the cameras, does she have any reason to suspect that I know where she is? Looking around, I appreciated the interior camera. I think she saw me sitting on the sofa, but it's unlikely that she saw me rummaging through the file cabinet and working at the table in the corner. She would have noticed the frantic activity, but she had no idea what it was all about. For the rather vindictive reason of cutting into his or her planning time and no other, I decided to confront her now. Anger or not anger on my part, I don't know. Believing there was no camera in the kitchen, I went in and left the house through the kitchen door. Opening the side garage door, I removed the tracker and placed it on a shelf next to the car, figuring it wasn't sensitive enough to detect such a small movement. I pulled up to a cheap motel just outside the city and parked a little further away. Walking in the darkness, I discovered her car hidden behind the main building, invisible from the highway. There were only 4 cars in the parking lot, and none within 5 spaces of her. The room directly in front of her car was also the only one that still had a light on. Looking around for witnesses, I checked to see if there was a view into the room before creeping up to the window. He was absent. Bracing my ego for what I might discover, I raised my hand, clenched my fist, and prepared to knock. Before my knuckles even hit the wood, I saw the headlights of a car coming around the corner. Thinking that it might be her lover, I moved away from the door, pretending to look for my room. A small car with the name of a local pizzeria pulled up next to my wife's car. I idly thought she was having a late dinner, but then I remembered that on a Friday night in this city, you can wait up to 3 hours for pizza to be delivered. The teenager got out of the car, took a pizza box and a bottle of soft drink from the back seat, and knocked on the door. Veronica opened it, dressed exactly the same as when she left our house, handed over some cash, and then accepted the goods. From the shadows, I watched the delivery man return to his car. My wife left the door open while she carried a pizza in one hand and a drink in the other to place next to the bed. Freeing her hands, she turned to the door to close it. She gasped when she saw me in the doorway, then her eyes darted back to the bed. Slightly embarrassed by the evidence of tears on her face, I glanced around the rest of the room. The bed was rumpled, but only as if a person was lying on top of the blanket. Her laptop was open on the bedside table. The screen split, one side showing our living room, the other our bedroom. Without saying a word, I walked into the room. Entering the bathroom, I checked that it was empty. Only her toiletries lay on the sink. Returning to the main room, I looked in the closet. Empty. Then knelt down to look under the bed. Nothing. This exhausted all the hiding places in the tiny motel room. I plopped down on a hard office chair under a tiny desk. So I was right. She saw me opening her cameras, told her lover to leave, and cried when she realized her date was ruined. That was good news, wasn't it? Of course, this meant that she repented of what she had done to me, to us. I sat and watched as tears streamed down her face again. Does she regret that the revelation about her date hurt me? With a hardened heart, I realized that the reason for the tears did not matter. We were broken beyond repair. Staring at her, I simply asked, "Where is he?" In my opinion, at that time there was only one motivation for this question. I wanted to know why she thought it was acceptable to lie to me and arrange a meeting with another guy behind my back. That's why her answer confused me. Eventually, I realized that she was answering another question that I didn't ask. Why was she spying on me? I'm really sorry, John. I should have known. What the hell are you talking about, Veronica? When you returned from that trip about a month ago, you were different. Calmer. More detached. It was as if something was on your mind. I thought you cheated on me while you were gone. Then you suddenly started working late and allegedly going out with friends. When I saw that you changed the password on your computer, I was already sure. I know that I changed the password before. I didn't want you to see that I was studying the signs of my husband's cheating. I deleted my search history, but you know more about computers than I do. I didn't know if you could still see what I was looking at. When you first came back, I just couldn't imagine having sex with you, thinking that you were with another woman. Then I decided that I could use sex as a test. If you didn't get it from me, you must have gotten it somewhere else. You only asked me for some a couple of times, and then you gave up. We've never been interrupted for so long before. Then you started calling me 3 or 4 times during my lunch break to make sure I was there and not spying on you so you could meet your mistress in peace. My work phone records all missed calls. I started taking longer breaks for lunch and checking to see if your car is at work. Julie has been giving me advice all this time. One time you almost caught us talking in the kitchen, remember? By the way, she thinks I'm just paranoid. What gnaws at me is that I don't know for sure. Tonight, when you came home early and almost caught me changing the battery in my bedroom camera, I thought I was going to faint from the stress. I was sure that you were cheating on me, but I needed proof. I bought cameras and a GPS tracker to get this evidence and end my dilemma. I still don't know for sure. I know you were just sitting at home alone when I went on that first trip, but I thought it was just because it was during the week. I was planning to go away for the weekend so you would have more time. Please, whether you're having an affair or not, can you just tell me? Uncertainty is killing me. I looked at her pained, tortured face, my mind in absolute turmoil as I watched her agony. My idea of myself as an honest person completely misled me into thinking there was only one solution to the clues I was given. The idea that these same clues were due to the fact that my wife believed that I was cheating on her could not even penetrate the edge of my mind. The pain on her face convinced me, more than her words, that she was telling the truth. I was so devastated thinking she was cheating on me that I missed all the signs that she thought I was doing dirty to her. My mind suddenly filled with sympathy for her. I remembered the horror and self-doubt I felt imagining her in the arms of another man. She experienced exactly the same torture, enough to lie and create a situation in which I could meet my lover. I realized that the looks I interpreted as guilt were actually silent assessments of my trustworthiness. Her detachment, pain from what she perceived as my betrayal. It is not surprising that over the past month, there has not been a single sincere verbal confirmation of her love. How could she speak words of love to a man whom she suspected of stabbing her in the back? It was clear to me that I had only glimpsed the pain she had been experiencing for a month. Suddenly, a terrible thought came into my head. Do you think Dave and Allison felt the same way? What? What do Dave and Allison have to do with this? Do you think your ex-husband and my ex-wife felt pain, fear, and doubt like we did when she caught us in bed and told him? No wonder neither of them ever thought about forgiving us. They were too devastated. I could tell by the renewed expression of horror on Veronica's face that the full impact of how we had hurt our ex-spouses, the people we supposedly loved, had fallen upon her. Her knees buckled, and she fell back onto the bed. 2 weeks later, we began negotiations on how to separate with the minimum of fuss. It was clear from the ease with which she believed that I was capable of betraying her, and vice versa, that we both had serious trust issues. She was a liar, like me, in a relationship born of deceit. No amount of powdered sugar could hide the fact that our relationship was doomed from the start. Most people judge others by their own standards, so each of us suspected, worse, knew, that the other was capable of deception. We parted as friends and even indulged each other's sexual desires from time to time. With her biological window all but closed, Veronica actually approached me a couple of years later, asking that since she had been unable to find a new life partner, would I agree to father her child without any legal strings attached. I thought it was too weird and decided against it. From then on, I didn't trust her enough to have sex with her without a condom. A couple of years later, we separated. The last time I heard from her, she was still single, just like me. I'm glad we enjoyed sex when we were together while still married to other people, because now we're definitely paying for it. This concludes the lesson. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. Listening to the next one.